Howdy and welcome to the front seat of my truck. I'm sitting here in Moorcroft, Wyoming, and the reason for that is that in the bed of my truck right now, I have the big old crankshaft attached to the crank disc and the old bearing from my Beaudry number 11. Now you guys might remember from the last episode we got it tore apart. This is the most serious part of the rebuild that I'm doing for this hammer, and there's a couple things that need to be done. Unfortunately, the machining that needs to happen on it is too big for my capabilities, but I do have a friend whose name is Adam Booth, ABOM79 for those of you who enjoy watching machining content on YouTube. So I'm driving from Bozeman, Montana on down to Florida to get this thing ready to go back into service, ready to rock and roll. He's definitely the right guy for the job. He knows exactly how to do this kind of work, and so I'm very excited to get to see the right way to do this sort of thing and to get this machine brought back to life. With that, I'm about 450 miles into my trip, so let's finish off those last 2,000 and I'll see you down there. Today's episode is sponsored by Factor. Factor is America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. That means that you can have chef-prepared meals show up right at your door, ready to rock and roll. They're ready in 2 minutes, never frozen, delicious, and nutritious. Now, despite the fact that they are chef prepared, that doesn't mean that you're stuck with just one thing. They have 34 different meal choices every week, which means that you're not stuck in the same old rut. You're not eating the same thing over and over again. You can choose between keto, calorie smart, chef's choice, vegan, vegetarian, whatever you want. They've also got breakfasts like egg bites and smoothies, as well as a bunch of other snack add-ons. I really enjoy cooking, but oftentimes I don't have time to cook, and so having those meals ready to rock and roll is really, really nice. Head to factor75.com and use code WillStelter50 for 50% off your first Factor box. Thank you very much to Factor for sponsoring today's episode. With that, let's hippity hop back on in. Well, made it to Adam's shop, got the shafts unloaded on the forklift, and now we get to fire up the pacemaker and get to turning.
Heck yeah, man. This is going to be some good stuff.
Awesome.
You get the honors of having the first workpiece in the American pacemaker in the new shop here.
I'm so excited. That's going to be great. So this is a 20x96 pacemaker. So it's the big brother to my lathe. It's a year older, or no, a year newer.
Yeah, this one's a 42 model.
Super, super cool.
What, the rotation there?
Yeah. Yeah, that's super neat.
You got that less than a thou, so. Looks nice and straight.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the first step is to take that and turn it down to get a better surface finish on the shaft itself. Because over the last 100 years, I don't know if it came out of the factory how it did, but it's kind of chewed up. It has a poor surface finish, and if it has a poor surface finish now, it's going to imprint that and kind of wreck the bearing that we're going to make after this a lot faster than if it has a nice surface. We only had to take off about 20 thousandths of an inch, did a couple of light passes, just a few thou at a time, and Adam got a absolutely killer surface finish. With the shaft finish up, it's time to take this 110-pound chunk of 660 bearing bronze. It's 6 inches on the outside diameter, 4 inches on the inside diameter, and 18 inches long. We got this from our friends at CRC Distribution, and we need to turn it down to about a 5.5 inch outside diameter and about 4.5 inch inside diameter. That means that we're ripping off a 1/2 inch off the outside and a 1/2 inch on the inside. This is probably the hardest part of this whole thing because being able to bore down that 15 inches inside the bronze is not easy. You need to have a very stable, very stout boring bar to be able to do it. Adam had a 2-inch boring bar and a hand-ground high-speed steel tool.
Boring bar.
Oh my gosh.
2-inch Allures.
That's not boring at all. It's very exciting.
I almost need a crane to be able to put the thing in there.
Now there's 3 outside diameters. There's a spot for an oil groove in the center, and then the 2 diameters that actually interact with the inside of the frame of the hammer. These want to be a few thousandths oversized from the actual inside diameter in the hammer frame because we're going to shrink the bearing by supercooling it and expanding the frame with heat. slap those suckers together, and then they kind of grow back to their room temperature sizes, and they are locked in for life. Now, because I don't have an accurate way to measure the inside of the frame, we pulled our outside dimensions off of the old bearing, and for the inside of the bearing, we used the dimensions based off of the shaft with a little bit of room for oil clearance and a little bit of room for the bearing shrinking when we put it inside the hammer, and because it can't expand all the way, it is going to be a little bit tighter on the inside. Adam, of course, nailed it because he's amazing.
Cut nice and straight.
It's awesome.
So that'll put us within 40 thousandths of your large diameter, which will be this end.
Finishing out the ID.
Yep.
Got it dialed in for a 6 thousandths cut. The final pass on the inside of the bearing. Ooh.
That'll be your finish right there. Hopefully you like it.
I think that's pretty much acceptable.
5 3/4 and 4 3/4. .476 is what we wanted. 476. That's how it's finished.
That's awesome.
Good.
So now our inside diameter is correct. The outside diameters are correct. It's got the oil groove or oil recess in the middle, both oil grooves on either side. And now it's time to cut the groove that runs down the length of it.
You have your linear groove. We've done the 2 radial grooves, so we just got that 1 linear groove left.
Awesome. So now that grooving tool is turned sideways on the boring bar, it's centered. So now we can manually run these handles and scrape away, not actually turning the piece at all, but just running it back and forth and scraping away the oil groove that goes at the bottom of the bushing. I missed getting a shot of it, but Adam did that radius in the corner and it looks unbelievable. Now we're getting ready to part it off. I'm gonna be standing here with a broom, making sure that it doesn't fall down and die while Adam runs the machine.
You ready to do this?
Oh yeah.
All right, let's do it, man.
Awesome.
Here it comes. Well, it worked out.
Woo!
I think you did tag that corner there a little bit, but
I think I
all right.
did.
If it's just a little dent, don't roll it in the chips. You'll put dents in it.
Oh.
Take it over there. Just take it to the big table, and let's take a look at it. So all we'll have left here is to just get it deburred. I think we're just going to do this by hand, and he can even certainly get in there with like a hand grinder and finish that out a little bit nicer if he wants to.
Little ding in the undercut there. That was my bad. But that thing looks unbelievable.
Yep, turned out good.
Wowza. Now another thing that I didn't mention earlier is my first stop on my trip was in Sheridan, Wyoming. I picked up a bearing and a shaft from my friend Kevin Willie. This is for a number 2 Beaudry, which is the same size as the little baby Beaudry that I have. And the exact same thing needed to happen. He sent me with some 954 aluminum bronze, a little bit of a harder alloy, a little bit tougher, but we basically needed to turn down the shaft and turn down the exact same situation in that bearing. And so we did that as well. His actually took a little bit longer than mine did, I think, in some cases, just because the fixturing and whatnot was a little bit tougher on the smaller piece. That big piece of bronze, Adam was able to just hold on to on the back, and it was stout enough and stiff enough that the hangout wasn't so bad that it was coming out of square when he was making the cut. But with that smaller piece, it was thin enough that we needed to use the steady rest to keep it kind of in line. That was a really interesting process to see as well. I've never seen a steady rest get used in real life before. It was very neat to watch Adam go back and forth and do all the things to make sure that everything stayed nice and square during the cut. Well, Adam's just finished the last stop on our last piece, which means we just gotta pull it out and I'm ready to hit the road. He did an amazing job. It's kind of sad that it's gonna get hidden away inside a machine.
That, unfortunately, is how most of the work that a machinist does. It gets hidden.
Oh, man.
It gets hidden, it gets put away, and nobody ever sees it again.
That's a bummer, because that is stunning. Well, we got the pieces loaded up. Adam, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Did an amazing, amazing job.
Thank you.
It's really a bummer that they're going to be hidden inside a machine, but now you guys know just how pretty those pieces are.
We know where they're going to be hidden at.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to get some documentation of them going in and being put to service.
Oh, it's going to be great. So what about this? Was anything about here more challenging than you thought it was going to be, or is this pretty standard for what you normally do?
No, it was pretty standard work. The biggest challenge that I had, and you probably know, was that oil groove, that linear oil groove.
Yeah.
And it's because I still got a little bit of play in the cross slide of the pacemaker, so it was trying to pull. And that's the only thing that gave me a problem. But the machine worked great. It cut nice and straight. I mean, it did a beautiful job on your pieces. So it was all pretty well straightforward. But I've never cut an oil groove that long. If we had more time, if we weren't like in such a rush, and we had more time, we would have gone to the home shop and used the shaper to cut those oil grooves in there.
Next time.
Yeah. Next time
I'll break it and then we'll come back and do another one. How about that?
Yeah, that sounds good, man. We'll get the shaper fired up. But I had a lot of fun, man. I was glad that you got to come by, and I was glad to be able to help you with this project. And I look forward to seeing the outcome of it and seeing you smash some steel with it, man.
Yeah, that was a great time hanging out in the shop and ended up with a great final product. So,
yeah.
Adam, again, thank you.
You're welcome.
With that, let's head on back to Montana. So the one thing that we didn't do at Adams is drill the oil holes that allow oil to come up from the bottom here. But you can see on this guy, there's 4 holes. Maybe we'll try throwing it in the mill. I'm going to touch this up with a file, smooth it out a hair, make sure that there's no raised burrs. You see right here, I think this is where they originally machined it in the factory, and they left that a little proud because the back of the crank disc doesn't actually touch that. But I want to file it down just to make sure that I can get the whole rest of this flat. I'll be able to take a stone and stone that flat here in a second after I get this burr off of there. What we need to do is to take this fella. I did not modify this in any way. It came without the valve on there. The styrofoam cooler that we found was not quite big enough, and we went to 3 stores looking. So we kind of just went with it. That's cool. We're at about 150 degrees right now. Got to get it up to about 300 or 400. The heavier parts of the casting are a little cooler. 350 up to about 410. That is currently negative 320 degrees, which is a lovely temperature. I have this pin right here, and that's what I'll use right in there. And that'll allow me to index it to make sure that my oil drain hole is lined up. And it should give me some index for the kind of adjustment back and forth. Oh, come on. Oh, easy day. Oh, we diddly done it, Isaiah. An interesting thing to note is that when we slid it in there, it was shorter by not quite 1/8 of an inch overall. It was flush at the front and maybe a 1/16 inch at the back shy. It then heated up about 500 degrees and it expanded a pretty decent amount. We're sitting pretty at, we're maybe 30 thousandths over on that side. That is 1/32 of an inch. And we are plumb flush on that side. It's still at about 200 degrees or so, and so I'm not terribly worried about it. The issue is that that side has a radius cut into it, right? And that matches this radius right here. So that means that we're gonna have a hard time filing off the front of that to make sure that it still matches that radius, because it could be that we then end up with a weird, hello Marty. Basically means we have to be careful cutting off that radius to make sure that we're still getting the contact that we need in the corner up there. Hi. We're gonna have to do some measurementing and see if that's gonna be a problem, for one thing, if it's gonna be pushing this too far out. I don't think that it will be a problem. I think that that's okay, but we might have to do a little bit of filing on it. We'll see. So we're gonna get this hammer put back together and running in the next episode, so stay tuned for that if you enjoy power hammers and content. Thank you guys so much for following along. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment. Let me know all of the things that I did wrong. I'm sure there was lots. Huge thank you to Adam for doing the machining and hosting me during this time. Thank you to our patrons for patronizing and keeping this channel going. And thank you to Factor for sponsoring today's episode. With that, I will see you on the next one.